Good morning, New Orleans. Good morning, comrades. Unfortunately, you are stuck with Robert this week. It is, when you're listening, it is September 13th. I'm recording this on September 12th, the day before. I'm talking to you as we usually speak from the past and venturing into the future. Jeff has some work commitments, so we're going to have some guests in the next coming weeks because nobody wants to, as much as I love to hear myself talk, I understand that that's a lot for anyone. So we're not going to subject the dear WHIV listener to that. Because I wasn't proactive, Jeff has got all the flashy intro and outro music that you're used to. That way, this might feel jarring. The intro and outro music that I paid for, by the way, I did many years ago when we started the podcast. I was spending money for no reason for a hobby podcast that turned into a weekly radio show here at WHIV 102.3 FM. End all wars, says the good doctor. My boss, who's never paid me a dime, Dr. Mark Allen Derry, literally doing the Lord's work out there. One of the premier infectious disease doctors in the world. I'm going to say that. No, I'm just going to say he is it. He's Mr. Infectious personalities, infectious diseases. He is a man for all seasons. Except he didn't say that anyone should be burned at the stake. That I know of. That could change. I might have to recant that if he's on some kind of a weird Cromwell take. That's not Cromwell, though, is it? No. Man for All Seasons, I always get those two confused. It was Henry's I haven't watched the Tudors in a long time, too, so correct me. You can email us at goodmorningcomrade.com and correct me. But it's definitely not Cromwell. Who was that guy? The Man for All Seasons guy who, very appropriate to, today's show, he when people did not want to embrace Catholicism. Let me just Google this real quick. I am in front of my computer, so I want to know what I'm talking about. Let's see. Man for All Seasons. Who was this dude? No, I don't want the actual play. I want Thomas More. Sir Thomas More. So, very appropriate. To today's, tragic topics. That he was a man who, because people wanted to break away from Catholicism, they wanted to read the Bible on their own, they didn't want the Catholic Church and their priests and their monopoly on religion to, they wanted to not follow Martin Luther, but they wanted, what Martin Luther provided was a translated Bible so they could worship God in their own way, in their own homes, and that went against the monopoly of the Catholic Church. And Sir Thomas More ordered that, those who did not turn away from Martin Luther and did not follow the ways of the Catholic Church to be burned at the stake. And I'm sure at no time he ever thought that he himself would be burned at the stake by his friend, the king, when the king turned against Catholicism, because apparently Anne Boleyn had it going on like that. Apparently she was whatever medieval English people thought had the riz. What do the kids say? Hot S, type-ish, they thought she so good made him drop Catholicism. The thing was so good, it made him change his religion. It must have been something. So, usually, I have to come up with, especially when I'm doing a solo show, because we're not live, we're pre-recorded. Usually I have to think of something, that's evergreen to talk about on the pod. And I think to myself, okay, what can I do that's going to be evergreen and entertaining for the people that are going to be listening over the radio? And unfortunately, we're here at something that's evergreen. It seems like the boil of stochastic terrorism. I heard, if you heard a buzz, I just got a buzz on my phone from the Red Alert app. It looks like sirens are going off in Tel Aviv. I'm sure if that plays out to any kind of anything, y'all will already know about it tomorrow in the future. But yeah, so, the perpetual boil of stochastic terrorism and gun violence and all the things that this so-called great country was founded in, and we revel in when it happens to somebody else. Now, again, all of a sudden, people are saying, oh, how can this be? We're not like this. How could this be here in America? This isn't my America. And let me tell you, as a person of color, and I don't want to say as a black man, I am actually biracial. My mother's white. My dad's a black Jew. But I will never use that word. I use that as a descriptor only for people who I'm really actually interested in knowing my lore and origin story, which is y'all. Y'all are the audience. You are kindly enough to listen to this. But I would never, ever, 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 ever use the word biracial if I was to first meet someone, even an acquaintance, who, asked the question like, oh, what's your race or whatever? Because I'm kind of racially ambiguous. I don't know why you're asking me that anyway, but whatever. I don't really get asked that this much in New Orleans because of the Creole, Spanish, African, French, mixture of the city. A lot of people look like me. So I really don't get, and they're accepted as, African people. So you don't really have to explain that. People might say I'm Creole or whatever, but it's just, you're black, But I would never say that to an acquaintance. And the reason why is because being black is not the identity that I choose. It's the identity that, more alarms going off. Tel Aviv is going crazy. Hopefully everybody's safe. Wink, wink, nod, nod, I guess. That's not the identity that I've chosen. That's the identity that America has put on me. And so if I'm going to be that, then I'm going to be that. And I'm not going to run from it. I'm going to wear it like armor. Right? It's like, if the Klan shows up outside my house tonight looking for my blood, I'm not going to be able to come out and say, hey guys, I'm half white. They're not going to care about that in the slightest. So I'm going to wear the identity that the people who want me dead have given me. And I'm going to wear it proudly. And I'm going to wear it like armor, and I'm going to live and I'm going to die as a black man. The one drop rule, that was in effect for a long, long time in America, even though we've only been a country for not that long. And I always find it very interesting about a biracial identity is that to white people, you'll never be white, right? You'll never be white. You'll never be one of them. To the people that matters to. I don't want to blanket all white people. I'm married to a white woman. She's the greatest. She keeps me grounded. She is vehemently anti-racist and anti-fascist. She walks the walk, and her shoes are thin from how much of the walk she has been walking. And I am proud of her every single day. Just her ability to stand with me and unflinchingly through this hellscape we call America. But the funny thing is about about being biracial is, to the people that this actually matters to, the racists, the fascists, you'll never be one of them. Never. You'll never be white. It doesn't matter what you do. You'll always be that no gamer word that, shall never be uttered over the wonderful airwaves of WHIV 102.3 FM, New Orleans, low power end all wars. You'll never be that. But if you succeed, if you somehow navigate the hellscape of racism and capitalism and oppression, and you somehow claw yourself to the top of this sick society, then you're no longer black. Don't believe me? Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods, when he was on the come up, and all the white people loved him. Oh, did they love Tiger Woods? Loved him, Tiger Woods. And then they want to talk about he's Blasian, and they want to talk about his Asian mom, and talk about all this other foolishness, and they would never recognize him as a black man. Now, as soon as he got caught up in that foolishness with his wife, instantly reverted back to being a black man. Barack Obama. Barack Hussein Obama. Before he was president of the United States, he was a black man. When they were trying to, come for that man because he sat in Jeremiah Wright's church, and Jeremiah Wright was saying the right things, like Moses, he was shaming the devil, and the devil was stirred, and the devil was mad. That was a black man. But as soon as he won president of the United States, I literally heard white people say, well, nobody talks about his white side. They don't ever talk about his white side. He was no longer black. Because the idea to these people that a black man could rise above his station, I'm doing air quotes, above his station and be something more. Well, there has to be something else to it. For him to be that smart. And I'm not a Barack Obama fan. I knocked doors. I've said this a million times on the show. I knocked doors to the man twice in Cincinnati, Ohio. I am not a Barack Obama fan. The problems that we're even going to talk about today, I can distinctly place at the feet of Barack Hussein Obama of Barry. But as soon as he won the presidency, they want to talk about his white side, talk about his mom. I literally had white people say, well, nobody wants to talk about him. He's mixed. He's not black. So you'll never be to these people. So there's no use of trying to appease them. You throw the garden party for yourself. You're not going to please everyone. You're not going to even please half the people. You have to please yourself. But that's a tangent that I went off on because, the original sin in this country is, I don't know. I don't know if I want to say the original sin because I'm kind of hazy on dates. The Holocaust that we imposed on the indigenous people who are already here, that Holocaust. And the Holocaust and the Holocaust of the transatlantic slave trade, the Middle Passage. Those are our original sins in this country. So we are all living in a house. If you're listening to this in the United States, we are living in a house with a rotted foundation that has never been right. And now, as Brother Malcolm said, the chickens have come home to roost. In so many ways. In so many ways have they come home to roost. And I've heard from people who are much smarter than me, people with doctorates and historians with buku letters behind their name, that the chance to erase this sin, Do a little station ID. You're listening to 102.3 FM. WHIV, New Orleans, low power FM, end all wars. Now, these super, super smart people who've studied American history, they will also tell you that the chance to correct these sins was squandered after the Civil War. And the idea that we didn't at least exile from the United States these Confederates, make them go to Mexico, make them go to Canada, make them go somewhere. The Confederate generals, if not execute them. I'm not a death penalty guy. I'm not a pacifist either, but a whole nother thing. I'm not a death penalty guy because I drive around the streets of New Orleans and I see potholes, I see citywide corruption, I see screwed up infrastructure. You can see that anywhere. That's not a New Orleans thing. You can see that anywhere in the United States. But I see these things. And I go, the reason why I'm not a death penalty guy is this, because I'm definitely not a pacifist. But the reason why I'm not a death penalty guy is this. You're telling me, as I look at the crumbling infrastructure of the United States, you're telling me that I'm supposed to trust the same people who can't fill the potholes, that they're going to murder the right people. You're telling me that I don't see it. You're going to have to show me a little bit more before I'm going to be able to trust you with that. You understand what I'm saying? If we were living in some kind of utopia, even some kind of it's a dystopian, story. It's Philip K. Dick's Minority Report. Even if we lived in some kind of material utopia, like a Minority Report, and we had a way to figure out pre-crime, that's an argument you could convince me. I don't think you could fully get me there, but I'd be ready to listen. But again, you telling me the same country that we have people sleeping under the bridge while NFL teams are crying about they need a subsidized new stadium and a new scoreboard. Cincinnati, Ohio, I'm talking to you. I know about that. It's my second home. That the city needs to pay for, but yet you got people living under the bridge. You telling me I'm supposed to trust that government to murder the right people? I don't think so. I don't think that's how that works. No, sir. But back to my point on the Civil War. We think that we didn't exile these people or kill these Confederates, kill these Confederate generals, and that we let I want to say working class or the poors who fought, just your average Confederate soldier who just got kind of duped, that we let them just integrate back into society with no truth and reconciliation, with no re-education, that we let the South slip into poverty and chaos and disrepair with our reconstruction, doing air quotes. Well, that just created a cancer that turned into a boil that allowed these people to fly that racist trash flag, allowed these people to, put up monuments to people who had nothing to do with nothing, but you just wanted a racist symbol for me to look up at to know my place. I think about here in New Orleans, a couple years ago, one of the only good things the mayor, the former mayor of the city, Mitch Landrieu, did. He burnt a little Capitol. I'm sure he burned the Capitol. He burnt a little, political capital on his way out. And he got a lot of the racist Confederate statues down because New Orleans was didn't even fight any war. The closest we got was the Battle of New Orleans fighting a war, and that was against the British. The Confederacy didn't even have a stronghold here. This city had nothing to do with the Confederacy, but yet these statues still went up. Now we still got not Jefferson, but we still got racist genocider Andrew Jackson down in the French Quarter. That needs to go. by any means necessary. But yeah, that needs to go. But we finally got those down. And the thing about, we put Robert E. Lee downtown on a 100-foot tower, so you had to look up at him for some ungodly reason. And I said, look, man, if you want to put a white man who had nothing to do with the city of New Orleans, put John Brown up there. I'll go by there and I'll lay a wreath out there every Sunday and salute the damn thing every day. For that, if we want to put white people up that has nothing to do with New Orleans, that's fine. But because New Orleans is a liberal city, and as we know, liberals get it wrong all the time, they do a solution that doesn't help anybody. They take, terrorist Lee down, terrorist slave owner, racist, genocider Lee down, and they replace it with nothing. Instead of just being like, hey, if you're going to make people mad for that, put John Brown up there. I'm dead serious. Because at least you're going to make some people happy. But they call it Harmony Circle now, but ain't nobody harmonizing under nothing. But it goes back to my original point, to where, like, instead of flushing all this evil out of our system, right? Like a blood transfusion, we just allowed the bad blood to just settle and sit. And now the chickens have come home. You go to, Germany has a lot of problem. The far right's on the rise. That's just because, capitalism breaking down worldwide, and fascism will always be there if you do not provide people material, an uplift to their material conditions. That is where fascism breeds. But one of the things they did right was, the Fuhrer bunker where Hitler killed himself. You wouldn't even know what it was unless you looked it up. There's not a plaque. There's not a memorial. It's a mall parking lot. That's the reverence that the Confederacy should have been treated with here in America, which means absolutely none or negative reverence. So those are really, like, you want to know how we got here? Like, that's how we got here historically. And now that's how we got to forget September 11th. People are like, September 11th, who? I don't even know her. Now it's September 10th. And I'm just going to read. I'm going to start out and I'm going to read a news story about the tragedy on September 10th. Because I want you to feel the impact of this. And this comes from News Channel 7 in Colorado. Because this is the tragedy on September 10th. Evergreen High School student dies after shooting two peers and himself. One victim is in critical condition, while the other suffered non-threatening injuries and is stable. Jefferson County Sheriff's Office confirmed that the subject's wounds was self-inflicted. Evergreen, Colorado. A male student died after he shot and wounded two of his peers at Evergreen High School before turning the gun on himself Wednesday. All three juveniles were transported to Common Spirit at St. Anthony Health Center, where one victim remains in critical condition. The second victim suffered non-life-threatening injuries and was listed in stable condition. For school shootings go, this is ghoulish, but this is a good one. I mean, it looks like he didn't get a lot of rounds off, and it looks like both parties who got killed might live. That's how sick we are in this country, why I'm describing this as a good school shooting. But that's where we're at, folks. Why are we tiptoeing around it? Face it. Look at it. This is us. This is who we are. People say, this is not who we are. No, this is exactly who we are. This is who we've always been. In an update Wednesday night, hospital officials told Denver 7 that the second victim is now fair and had been transferred out of the hospital to a different facility. Jackie Keeley, spokesperson for Jefferson County, is not clear what led to the shooting. Spoiler alert, it's another groiper. And I know a lot of people who listen to the show aren't as sick and online as I am. A groiper is just like a turbo Nazi. Like, if you've got, liberals enable fascists, and then liberals enable conservatives, conservatives enable fascists, fascists enable groypers. So what a groyper is, the best way I can describe it and keep it quick, a groyper is a Nazi who thinks he's the Joker from Batman. That's a groyper. He thinks he's cute. He thinks he's funny. He thinks it's a laugh, right? He might not even be racist. A white groiper can have black friends and acquaintances because he just thinks the racism is funny and ironic. I'd rather touch the moon than try to figure out these people's thinking. It's next to be identified. Used a revolver during the shooting. That brings us to gun control. A revolver, 6 shots. Okay, now you see why it wasn't a mass casualty event, which happened on school grounds, both inside and outside the building. The sheriff's spokeswoman stated that the first 911 call was received at 12:24 p.m. Law enforcement response was swift, he said. We're law enforcement. Police and fire just showed up. When you hear the words active shooter, you know that there are kids involved. We're coming, she said. Wow, I mean, +1 for them. That's better than the cop on his phone in Uvalde, afraid to go in the building, but checking his Tinder account with the Punisher logo wallpaper on his phone. So that's a one. That's +1 for the Colorado cops. Let's see. Law enforcement established a reunification point at Bergen Meadow Elementary, located at 1228 South Hewan Drive. Sounds like a native name. That's what we do. We genocide you and then we name a street after you. Hello, Martin Luther King Boulevard. All students have been reunited with their parents, according to the sheriff's office. Interviewing dozens of students and staff members who witnessed or heard the event. Jeffco Public Schools Superintendent Tracy Dorland spoke during a press conference following the shooting, expressing anger and heartbreak. I'm devastated to share this news with you. I'm also angry that no child should absorb this, that no child should ever face this kind of danger, and no community should be asked to absorb this kind of pain, she said. In light of Wednesday's shootings, Jeffco Public Schools has canceled Thursday classes for all schools in the Evergreen and Confer articulated area. Plans for Friday classes will be released on Thursday, according to the district. This is from Colorado Governor Jared Polis, who released the following statement. My heart goes out to the victims and their families as they grapple with this senseless act of violence. I, the Evergreen community, and the entire state of Colorado are devastated by this tragedy and will keep the victims as well as their friends and family in our thoughts. State law enforcement is assisting at the scene, and I'm offering the assistance of my administration in the days ahead to get children and families the resources needed to cope with this terrible act of violence. This kind of violence has absolutely no place in Colorado or anywhere else, especially our schools, where kids should feel safe to learn and grow. No family should ever fear for their children as they send them to school. I will continue to monitor the situation from my public safety team. How many times have we heard a statement just like that? How many of our children have been sacrificed on the altar of the Second Amendment and the altar of the gun? And that is the permanent eulogy that they get. How many times? I mean, I can't even count. Like, I am a Columbine kid, right? So when I say I'm a Columbine kid, like that's where I grew up. You know, that not where I grew up. That's the age I grew up in. And Columbine, like, scared everyone out of their drawers. But we soon got over it. 100%. We soon no longer cared about that at all. And we just kept going because it's important that that it's really important that the firearms industry keeps the flow of capital going. They need that money. So therefore we cannot have gun control. Like we can't do it. We cannot do it because what would happen if the stock of what would happen if the stock of Glock, or Glock's not an American company, of Colt went down? Like, I mean, come on, guys. Like, that we have to sacrifice our children on this altar, or shareholder value will go down. And in America, that cannot be at all. Let's see here. Perfect. Okay. Just prepping something for later. But yeah, I mean, this is as good. I mean, what else can this man say? But unless you're pushing for gun control, this is going to carry the same weight as thoughts and prayers, which has become a meme at this point. You're listening to WHIV 102.3 FM, low power New Orleans, end all wars. Victim advocates, mental health professionals, victim compensation representatives, and school personnel will be at the center from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. on Thursday and 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. on Friday. The center is open to all students, faculty, family, and community members, according to the Sheriff's Office. Information about retrieving vehicles and personal items from Evergreen High School will be available at the center. Students and staff who witnessed the shooting have not yet spoken with an investigator and asked to come to the center to do so. Shaken parents rushed to the reunification center on Wednesday afternoon for any word on the condition of their children following the shooting. Ty, a freshman, told Denver 7 he was outside on campus when he heard popping noises and tried to get inside as soon as possible. It was just a lot. Yeah, buddy, I bet it. I mean, I don't mean to laugh, but like, yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot you shouldn't have had to go through. And for you to just describe it as a lot is... like, these kids' lives are ruined who saw this. Do you understand? Like, the kind of therapy and the kind of, like, they're not going to feel safe in any public space ever again. If so, it's going to take decades. It just doesn't affect the people who caught lead or the shoot. It affects everyone who watched this, everyone who was in that vicinity. It affects all of us. Like, we now have more traumatized kids who are going to be desensitized to violence and just think, hey, this is just a thing that happens. This is the thing that our adults allow to happen because they don't care about us. They don't love us. They love shareholder value. We don't care, but they don't care about us. And then therefore they will become adults if they consume enough calories and stumble into adulthood, who will carry that same trauma and nihilism to another generation. You know, it's funny. Like I'm really trying not to like be too flippant, but the adage of, you know, I'm 44. Our parents, you know, what they say. Oh, when I was your age, I walked to school in the snow both ways uphill. These kids, what are they gonna say? Like before third period, we already had 2 mass casualty events. Stop your crying. That's the world that we are handing over to these children. We've already handed it over. It's not even a thing that can be stopped. The only thing now we can do is try to contain it. It's the world that was handed over to me. I just saw the beginning of the beast. These kids are in the belly of it. I walked outside gym and heard shots. Multiple shots kept firing, he said. Just loud pops at first. I didn't think it was anything. That is the thing about firearms. If you've never heard a gun go off before, it's not like the movies. It just doesn't sound like that. And your mind will not place it as a gunshot. It's one of those things. It's weird. But once you've been to the range, you're, comfortable with firearms, like I am, I'm a Marine Corps vet. And you hear that sound, it's bung, bung, and it's unmistakable, You know what that sound, what the smell of, not cordite, but gunpowder is. It's really an accustomed thing. But if you've never heard it before, you would think it's just like party poppers or, small fireworks or something. It's not a bang, 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 like you would think like in a movie. I didn't think anything. I just heard it repeatedly and it kept shooting and then I knew it was shots. Ty said his phone was broken and he was unable to text his parents. How terrifying. Denver 7's Veronica Acosta spoke with students and parents at Bergen Meadow Elementary, and she has more reactions from students here. That's a link. Got this off the interwebs. Students fleeing from the shooting sought refuge at a nearby home, and the heartbreaking moments were captured on a Ring doorbell camera. Thank God those children weren't shot, like many of a kid who's went to a door. We just had a kid the other day, just him and his friends were ding dong ditching and got murdered. Thank God that somebody in this neighborhood didn't hear shots, think it was World War III, and just started firing on the first person they saw, like this other monster did. Shot a 11-year-old child in the back in Texas for doing ding dong ditch. Stuff that boomers have been doing forever. All right. So, if that's the first you've heard of that, and you thought I was going to talk about something else completely, I don't blame you. I don't blame you. Because our despicable news media hasn't said a lick. We're even past the point of if it bleeds, it leads. Because everything's bleeding, and only one thing can be leading in the news. So I completely understand if you sitting here on September 13th, the year of our Lord 2025, this is the first you've heard of this. And this isn't because of our lax Second Amendment rights, which our lax Second Amendment rights are used as a defense to make sure that shareholder value doesn't go down for, weapons manufacturers. It's capital. I can't say it enough. Capitalism is the end boss. It must be defeated. It must be slain. It is the dragon that's hoarding all the treasure of your excess labor value. And until we slay that dragon, we will keep and it's hungry, and it wants your children, and it goes after your children by feeding them poisonous food, by having them live in poisonous, falling, crumbling infrastructure, by lax gun laws where we don't even follow the Second Amendment. I am pro Second Amendment. I am absolutely pro Second Amendment. So just to get us, all on the same page, and I love American history. Love it. Let's take a little bit of time in the show and actually read the Second Amendment. The right of the people to bear arms shall not be infringed. The right of the people to wait a minute. I'm getting the producer of Good Morning Comrade in my ear right now. This is behind the scenes. This is behind the scenes knowledge I'm giving y'all right now. This is not every show does this, but the producer in my ear for Good Morning Comrade is talking to me, and the producer is me. And I didn't read. They're saying that I left out half of what the actual amendment says, the actual Second Amendment. So, I'm prone to being wrong once a year. I guess this will be the time. Let me read the whole Second Amendment, because apparently it cut. Oh, I see it. I see it now. I see it. Let's read it. Second Amendment, Constitution of the United States. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. They always leave out the well-regulated militia part. Always. Because that doesn't compute with increasing shareholder value. That doesn't compute with you and your buddies that want to go to Honey Island Swamp and go to the range. You and Bubba, who go get Chick-fil-A in the morning and then go to Sportsman Warehouse in the afternoon and buy a new gun when you've already got 50 of them at home, you got two hands, and you got 50 guns for some reason, are not a well-regulated militia. The well-regulated militia is the Army National Guard, which is being used, who, under their own charter, they are under control of the governors, Because what the Army National Guard is for, it's not for Donald Trump and whatever fascist comes after him or before him. I don't care, Barack Obama or whoever. It's not for them to unleash the army on American citizens, which is what they're doing. Obviously, we all know that. They want to do that now in New Orleans, and the governor is all for it. What the Army National Guard is for, forget their commercials, where it's like, oh, we saved a puppy from a flood. Oh, we rescued a kitten from the top of a house in a fire, or whatever their dumb commercials are. And they're handing out MREs to people in America who, after an earthquake. No, that is not what they're for. They are for what the Second Amendment says. That's why they take a pledge to the Constitution and they take a pledge to the governor, not the President of the United States. What the Army National Guard is for is when the federal government gets out of hand. And if there ever was a second civil war, the Army National Guard would be on the side of the states protecting us from a fascist federal government. Let's read it again. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to bear arms shall not be infringed. A well-regulated militia. So anytime one of these yahoos, one of these chuds, one of these gravy seals, one of these American burger enjoyers wants to talk to you about the Constitution, and they want to talk to you about the Second Amendment, make them read the whole Second Amendment. Do not stutter. And make sure that they understand that them and their yahoos chewing skull, trying to get away from their wives for a couple hours at the range, you're not well regulated, and you damn sure ain't no militia. But that is the words of the Constitution. Not this foolishness where you can just go willy-nilly buy a gun. And I like guns. Guns are cool. Guns are sexy. I like talking about guns. I like shooting guns. All that. But guns aren't supposed to be cool. That's a byproduct. They are to murder human beings, right? You see what I'm saying? And you'd be like, well, if we got rid of guns, then wouldn't people just use knives? Yeah, they would, but a knife can cut my steak. A baseball bat I can play baseball with. It has a secondary purpose. A gun has no other purpose than to stop a living thing from living. No other purpose. And then if I do use a knife or a gun or a bat, not a gun, but I use a bat. If I run up in a school and I try to do a mass stabbing, how many people I'm gonna get? 2, 3 before they jump on me? All the kids, right? Or they run away from me? But if I run up in there in a gun, it's anything goes. You don't know how fast the bodies are going to stack is how fast I can squeeze off and how fast I can change mags. That's how fast I can stack up bodies. The weapon has no other purpose. Now, to the other thing. Secondary tragedy happened that day. I'm sure you're all aware of. Tragic event in Utah. I saw a man die. I saw an orator, a man who made his living doing the same thing I'm doing right now, speaking his mind, talking. Mr. Charlie Kirk died in a horrific, you're talking to a Columbine kid. Again, you're talking to a Columbine kid who was in the Marine Corps. I have seen the wildest ish. I have seen people's heads cut off. I have seen the craziest videos that used to just get sent to my Marine Corps email. We would just send these around like it was a cool thing to do, to like watch people die. And I think that, our commands had to know that we were watching this stuff, and they had to know it was circulating. Like ISIS videos and stuff, because they had to think like, well, let them watch that because it'll rile them up. And it did. It did. A lot of guys It really, really, really did. And it'd be like, we want to go, Al Qaeda, ISIS, the guys in Chechnya. We want to go stop this barbarism, right? We want to go fight the good fight. We want to go fight the enemies that the U.S. created and funded, and now we are getting blowback from. But let's don't talk about that right now. Let's just talk about the snuff video that you just watched at 19. That was, watching Charlie Kirk tragically lose his life was live leak level, disgusting. And I saw it, and I wish I didn't. Listen to WHIV 102.3 FM, low power, end all wars. And this man, he certainly was a man. He certainly was. What can we say about Charlie Kirk? He was an orator. He talked a lot. He said things. He was a man that existed. He definitely was that. He was a man that existed on Earth and tragically lost his life on that day. And I really want to, for the last, we got 15 minutes left of the show, just about. Maybe shorter. I might make it to the end of this. I might cut a little short. It depends. I don't know. I really want to celebrate him, Charlie Kirk, in the way that he would want to be celebrated. And he was an orator, and he loved to, like myself, he loved to hear himself speak, and he had things to say. So I really just want to turn this last bit of the show into in the black community, we don't call it a funeral, we call it a going home celebration. I want to turn this into a going home celebration for this man. And somebody who, again, definitely was a person, and definitely, like the kids that we talked about who, were traumatized and shot on the same day, definitely had a family and people who loved him. And all the other school shootings, Pulse shooting in Orlando, those people had people who loved them, and too, just like Charlie Kirk. So I really want to use this time to celebrate the man. And I want to leave you with, what he would want is to get his message out, right? Because, free speech, it means so much to him. So let's celebrate him and celebrate his messaging, and let's just read what the man had to say. And I'm just, I don't want to make this about me. So what I want to do is I just want to read what he said in his own words, with no commentary, no other context added. This is like kind of a moment of silence to where we're just going to be silent. We're just going to take in the words of this man who definitely had things to say. He said during a 2024 podcast with fellow right-wing activist Jack Persovic, "I'm sorry. If I see a black pilot, I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified." At a December 2023 political conference hosted by Turning Points USA, that was his group that definitely was a group. I guess it still is a group. It definitely was a group. Wired magazine reported that Kirk decried not only Martin Luther King Jr., calling the civil rights leader awful and not a good person, but also the Civil Rights Act of 1965 that outlawed discrimination on the basis of race, color, religion, sex, and national origin, and prohibited segregation. He thought that was a mistake. He said, and I quote, "I have a very radical view on this, but I can defend it. And I've thought about it," Kirk said. "We made a huge mistake when we passed the Civil Rights Act in the 1960s. On July 28th, Kirk posted a video on X saying, "No, Israel is not starving Gazans." Amid reports from humanitarian organizations to avert further starvation and famine in the region. No, this man took a brave stand. And I said I wasn't gonna, provide commentary, but I want to lift that up. This was his stand. This was that he found so brave of a stance to say that, no, starving child, I can see you starving. I can see you being genocided by the Israeli occupational force. But I reject that. Speaking of that, he said, what we just talked about, with just the rejection of, what our lying eyes have to say. And I quote, Kirk said, I can't stand the word empathy. Actually, I think empathy is a made-up New Age term that does a lot of damage. Rejected starving children. The word empathy does damage, though. Something to think about. Really. Something to think about from a man who was definitely a man. In other interviews, he has also attacked birth control, claiming that it makes women angry and bitter, and that women over 30 aren't attractive in the dating pool. Also, he's quoted as saying, and I quote, America doesn't need more people from India. I mean, we've all thought that, right? I mean, I've heard his, again, I'm breaking my own rules, but I just want to uplift what he had to say. The people have been saying for years that he's just talking common sense. Let's see here. Just want to make sure I don't misquote this man who was, again, definitely a man. Kirk was asked about his uncompromising stance against abortion and what his decision would be if his daughter became pregnant due to sexual assault. That's awfully graphic, and I quote, that's awfully graphic, Kirk said. But the answer is yes. The baby produced by sexual assault would be delivered. Again, and I quote, George Floyd was a scumbag, unworthy of the attention. And I quote, now more than ever, we need the wall. With the China virus spreading across the globe, the U.S. stands a chance if we can control our borders. President Trump is making it happen. And I quote, we do not have enough people in jail in this country. One of my hopes is to turn the Republican Party into a resolutely stronger party on crime, he continued. We are not harsh enough on crime in this country, and this is not just about stopping criminals. If you enforce the law, housing will be cheaper because more of the country will be livable. Common sense. And as we wrap up, I'm going to leave you with, I saved this one for last because I thought out of all his positions, this is the one where he was speaking from his heart. This is the one he was most sincere, that he just wanted to live by. And that he was ready, obviously, ready to give his life for. It is worth it to have a cost, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year so that we can have the Second Amendment to protect our other God-given rights, he said. The Second Amendment of the United States Constitution grants Americans the right to bear arms. That is a prudent deal that no one talks about. Well, Charlie, I just did for you. I talked about it. And in closing for the show, I hope for all of us, as we sit here and reflect on the life of a man who definitely was a man who said things that I want for you, dear listener. Whatever you want for the least of us, whatever you want for immigrants, whatever you want for the queer, trans, gay folks, whatever you want for people of color, whatever you want for women, I sincerely hope that you receive the same in return. That's our show. Thanks again. We'll have some guests lined up. I don't know. You can follow Good Morning Comrade on TikTok. There's 2 accounts. I have one. Jeff has one where he posts. I have one where I post, and it's a little crazy. So I'm not saying I'm the fun account, but if there's 2 accounts, follow us both. But I'd say I've got the more fun account. You can check me out on twitch.tv, Lumencast, and search Lumencast. I'm on Twitch. It's been a pleasure, and I'm just glad I got to spend this time with you all. And enjoy your Saturday. Take care.